my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I've read some interesting books that I am excited to talk about this week, and let's just jump into it. So once again, the first book that I read was recommended by Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, so I will link him down below, and I think I'm just reading through a whole bunch of his recommendations lately. I finally picked up The German Girl by Armando Lucas Correa. This is following the story of a young Jewish girl fleeing Nazi Germany with her family, and they get on a boat. They have all their papers so that they should be able to make it to Havana and be safe, but the boat gets turned back when they arrive. It's following Hannah, our young girl's story, and her friendship with her best friend who is also on the boat with her, and what happens after. And it also has a more modern day storyline where she is meeting her great niece for the first time. And this was very interesting. I was a little hesitant to jump into it right away because I'm like, another historical fiction, World War II type book. Is it going to just feel like all the other ones I've read? I feel like I have read quite a few of those books in the past, and I wasn't too sure getting into it, but what I really appreciated about this book is that it was a perspective that I hadn't seen. People who were trying to escape before things went south in Nazi Germany, and who were stuck on these boats and who weren't allowed to make a new life, and also some of the history of Cuba. And I thought that was very interesting. I think overall it was really well done. The thing that I found a little bit difficult, because of course I have to have a critique, I can't just love a book, there's always something that bothers me, but this was, I think, intentional by the author, and it was that the rest of Hannah, the girl who was on the boat, the rest of her life was talked about throughout the book, but you didn't feel any connection to it. Really, you only felt like there was any real life in the characterization in the beginning part when they're on the boat, and then the after, you didn't feel that as much. And I think that was intentional to kind of show the future that she lost, and that her true life was before, and then everything wasn't quite right, or she didn't feel as engaged or connected later on. But it did, like, on a personal level, kind of bum me out. Like, I love when a story is like, you can create something out of bad situations and you can move forward. And I don't think that she didn't, that her life had no meaning. I just can really see, a before and after. And I do think that was very intentional by the author. But did I find it a little bit of a bummer? Yes. But it was overall a really well done book. Now, I finally got to the book Mother Brain: How Neuroscience is Rewriting the Story of Parenthood by Chelsea Conaboy. And this was a recommendation from Brandon at Brandon's Bookshelf, so I will link his channel down below. This book is talking about the changes that occur in the brain during parenthood, and it talks about parenthood in general, as well as birthing parenthood, and some of those hormonal changes and the treatments that are suggested and how we view things as a culture. And I thought that there were so many aspects that were really well done. This book had so many interesting things in it, and also really struck a chord with a lot of my own experiences, right? So a lot of my postpartum feelings, a lot of being a mother, and how I've changed, and how I feel like my brain has been rewritten through the experience of having kids. And I think that that's very interesting, and seeing how my husband has become a father and how he has changed. And I think that those are really cool things to look at. I think where this book was a little bit weaker was that the author is a journalist. She does a great job at doing some research and finding different studies that say different things and talking to people about their experiences and compiling it, and I appreciate that. But when a book says that the tagline is how neuroscience is rewriting the story of parenthood, I think I would appreciate more of a scientific perspective. And so I think maybe it was billed wrong because it was a lot of her own experiences, what she sees in the data, but it was a lot of, studies in mice, which can they be extrapolated to humans? No. And I think she does acknowledge that in a lot of places. I think that somebody who has done these studies themselves or is very involved in the scientific community might understand the significance a little bit better to be able to explain it. So I think while this presented a ton of really interesting ideas, it just couldn't give you the depth to really feel like you understood anything. It's more like I left thinking, wow, they should do more research on these hormones after mothers give birth. Oh, they should do more research on this or more research on this, but not feeling like I got a thorough understanding of each of the issues spoken about. So overall, it was a very interesting read. I just wish it had been able to go into more scientific depth. And what I got from this is that there just hasn't been enough research. So even if she could go into depth, the research, the data isn't there. And because a lot of times pregnant women have been excluded from studies in the name of protecting them and their babies, and that is a problem because we don't know enough about what happens in this time to people. And I know, from anecdotal evidence, from my own evidence, that yeah, my brain is different. Having kids changed my brain, and being able to think it through and see which changes have really been beneficial to me, looking at how things change like that is very fascinating. And overall, it had so many interesting things. I think it's worth picking up. And I think the author is very clear about her limitations. I just think that looking at the title of the book, I had higher expectations for the scientific rigor that this book would have, and it did not. But it was still very interesting. Now, I had a wonderful subscriber recommend the book Orchid Muse, A History of Obsession in 15 Flowers by Erica Hannickel. This book talks a lot about the history of orchids, tells different anecdotes from different influential people's lives and how they connected to orchids. And at the end of each chapter, it had a little section on how to care for specific orchids. It had a lot of really great pictures. If you like orchids, you're gonna like the book. I think you would enjoy it. It was fun. I love orchids and I want to hear more about orchids kind of book. If you don't love orchids or gardening, you might find it a little bit boring. And I think there were points that this book kind of lost me. I'm just like, okay, cool. It's an orchid, but it was quiet. So I think if you really love orchids or you want a quiet kind of meditative book about orchids, some of their history, some of their influence, some of the obsession that people have had with them and how much they prized them over time, you might really enjoy this. I'm glad I picked it up, but I do feel like there were points that I'm just like, I don't care about this flower anymore. But overall, still glad I picked it up. So after reading Lord of the Rings to my daughter, I went through so many recommendations for good books to read to her. I had a list, I pulled them all up, and I was trying to just find any book that I thought she might be interested in, and then I went through the list. Now, she has very definite opinions, and I don't know where they come from, so there were so many, no, I don't want that, no. And so I was very shocked when the book she decided on was a book that I had read back in 2020 in September of that year, and I just put it on the list because I remember liking it. It was fine, and so I stuck it on the list, and that's the one she picked. We picked up The Inquisitors Tale, or The Three Magical Children and Their Holy Dog by Adam Gidwitz. This story takes place at an inn, and all these villagers and different people are coming together to tell this story. So you get the story from all these different perspectives to talk about these three children who are purportedly performing miracles across the country and are now on the run from the king. And so it's three children and a dog that was somehow resurrected. Now, I remember enjoying this book the first time I read it, but picking it up again, I think I liked it more. It was really fun to read out loud to my daughter. There's silly things. There's a farting dragon at one point. That is what it's called. And there's knights digging through dung piles. There's some silly occurrences. But this book touches on some really deep things for it being a children's book. I mean, we have some Christian boys that go and set fire and kill an entire Jewish town, and we discuss that in this book. We have one of our main characters martyred and burned to death in front of everyone. We have swords drawn on children. We have one of our main miracle children beat a bunch of fiends to death with a donkey leg. Like, there's some weird things in here that I'm like, but it's very Middle Ages, and I feel like it really captured a time and place and introduced it to children in a very interesting way. And the writing was really clever and fun, but also didn't shy away from difficult topics. We're talking about why do bad things happen to good people, and instead of just giving us the answer, we're getting a few different answers from a few different people and how they view the world. And we're not told which one's right, but we're told so many different perspectives. I thought that it was really well done and really enjoyable. So I'm glad I read this one again, because I remember liking it the first time around, but I've liked it even more this time. So I'm glad that I picked this one up, and my daughter really enjoyed it. And that is everything I've read the past week. I've started in on some other books that I'm excited to talk about, so I will be back soon. If you have any thoughts on these books or recommendations to put on my list of books to try to entice my daughter with, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.